While for seagrass, 1 hectare of the seagrass can produce up to 100,000 liters of oxygen per day. And the degradation rate is estimated about 7% annually globally. You just imagine about 2 football size of seagrass meadow disappear every 30 minutes. I will talking about the seagrass and its role in the climate change mitigations. Okay, so just a brief introduction about myself. I just completed a master's degree in seagrass transplanting project from 2016 to 2019. And in 2016, with few of my friends, we found the Seagrass Guardian. It's a youth group with we promoting the seagrass conservations and also restorations. And also the honorary members of the Alpha Teams organizations, or simply called ETO, and also the member of the ClimatEducate. And I was being selected as a Malaysia project leader in 2016 and regional manager for East Asia, Southeast Asia, and Pacific in 2018 until last year. And I also the associate research, particularly in seagrass in EDREC Research, Education, and Conservation Center. Okay. So always a lot of people asking me why I chose seagrass as my scope or my study. Because from small, I always passionate for the marine life, especially the deep sea flora and fauna. And I also like to keep fish and also gardening, especially the exotic species. And in 2015, a lecturer from Australia who was teaching in University Malaysia Sabah at that time, he approached and suggests, is that possible to replant seagrass? And from my experience, I told him that seagrass is a plant, so there's always a way to replant it. We just need to find a way. So then he get the findings, and then I continue my master degree in University Malaysia Sabah. And there's always a big gap in the marine side of the conservations because a lot of organizations and researchers, they always focus in mangrove and corals because they thought that is a very important and a productive ecosystem, and ignoring the seagrass. But I found out it's a very, very big gap, and we need more people working on it as well. That's how I move in and focusing on seagrass conservations and restorations. So this is the group of the members of the Seagrass Guardian during the Power Shift Malaysia and Sabah camp in 2016. And some of the members are from Indonesia, Sabah, and Kuala Lumpur as well. So from that time, we work out a project which we call it Seagrass in the Sea, Savior of the Day. And from there, we slowly develop into actions where we form a Facebook page. Then slowly we start participate in workshops and exhibitions to promote seagrass, especially for the conservations. And in mid of 2017, we have our first logos, which are shown in the screen now. Then in 2018, we did a 3 workshop, 7 exhibitions, 7 talks, and 2 international conferences. And we also, the Seagrass Guardian also formed a collaboration with ClimatEducate for the online collaborations to talk and share about the seagrass and its roles in climate change mitigations, which later on we have a mascot, which we call Luz, the seagrass in the middle. And then we come out of photo collections of what really is a blue carbons, which we teach and share to people how seagrass can help to mitigate the climate change, which I will explain later on. Here is some of the photos of those exhibitions, talks, and workshops. And this is in 2018, the talk in UCSF Sabah. Also in the newspaper, where raising more people aware about the seagrass and why it's very low awareness. And this is in our Ocean Youth Leadership Summit in 2018 in Bali, where I participate and focusing on seagrass conservation as well. This is a seagrass tank in Borneo Marine Research Institute, which I helped to develop and maintain the tanks so that visitors to the aquarium, they also will learn and enjoy what is seagrass and how it looks like and the function of the seagrass itself. And this is a seagrass transplanting project with the Sabah Port in Sabah. This is the first seagrass mitigations part of the EIA, because under the EIA, there's no regulations or policy for seagrass. They're always focusing on corals and mangrove. But under this EIA, a friend of mine was approaching me and asking if that's possible to transplant the seagrass as part of the mitigation. And I say yes. And they invite me to the EIA meetings, and where I'm sharing about my experience of seagrass transplanting, and also proposing method how they can mitigate or relocate the seagrass as part of the mitigation strategy, so that we still can protect some of the seagrass meadow instead of being destroyed or reclaimed by the project. And under this project, the EIA was quite happy, and following projects, they also encourage all the consultants to include seagrass as well, which we hope in the future there's more seagrass will be highlighted in the environment impact assessment. Okay, now we move in the main topic of tonight. What is seagrass? And a lot of time people always will thought these are the seagrass. And sometimes some people will first question, can we eat seagrass? Because everyone thought seagrass is seaweed, but actually it's not. Seagrass is a flowering plant, while seaweed is an algae. And seagrass, they come in various sizes and forms. Some like ribbon shape, some like oval, and some even needles, which are not showing in these photos. Okay, this simple morphology difference between seagrass and seaweed. On the left-hand side, what we see is the seaweed, which have a root structure, which we call holdfast. It's only help the algae to anchor on hard substrate or sediments. While seagrass, they are like a terrestrial plants. They have leaf, stems, rhizome, and roots. The root itself will anchor into the sediment to absorb nutrients and also stable the sediments. And they also produce flowers, fruits, and seed. And some species of the seagrass, the fruits and the seed are harvested by the coastal community as the food. Like in Philippines, they harvest the fruits from the enhalas, the largest seagrass species. They either eat it raw or grind into powder to make cookies or bakery. Okay, so where normally we can find the seagrass. Here, this is a map of the global distribution of seagrass. And the darker green area is the higher biodiversity of seagrass, which is located inside the Coral Triangle regions. And up to date, Philippines are recording 16 species, while Malaysia, we have either 14 or 15 because there's one species still not confirmed yet. And we suspect there's two more species which are not been found, not been recorded or reported by any researchers in Malaysia yet. And this is because there are less researchers focusing on seagrass. More they are preferring focusing on corals because there's more biodiversity, more colorful and charisma. So why seagrass important? Because a lot of people think seagrass is just a grass. So there's not much can contribute to our ocean compared to the corals and mangrove. But even seagrass, small grassy appearance, they play a very important role in our coastal marine ecosystem. First of all, it creates a habitat and nursery ground for various of fish, crabs, shrimps, and other invertebrates. It's also the food for herbivores. The seagrass absorbs carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. And the rhizome help to reduce wave energy and stabilize sediments, and also carbon storage, which help to mitigate climate change. Each of these points I will explain more details in the following slide. Okay, so from the top of the illustrations, where we can see when they have the seagrass, it will help to, the seagrass canopy and the leaf will help to reduce the wave energy. When the wave energy are reduced, there are lesser erosion to our coastal or the shoreline. But what happens when there's no seagrass? There's nothing to reduce the wave energies, and it will cause damage and even erode our beach. This function is similar with the mangrove and also corals. That's why some coastal areas where they have three ecosystems, corals, seagrass, and mangrove, they are well protected even during the storm. Like in Aceh during the tsunami incidents, some coastal villages are safe because they are protected by the mangrove. So seagrass may look very soft and flexible, but they still play very important roles in coastal protections. Okay. Then the lower illustrations, this will help you better understand, because when the seagrass grow, they will extend their roots and rhizome, which create a very complex network. This will help to stabilize the sediments. In the same time, the leaf reduce the wave energy. So all the suspended particles, it will trap between the seagrass meadow. Just like illustration where you see a lot of brown dot, it will mostly settle between the seagrass meadows. This will help to maintain a good water qualities where we can see more clearly when we're snorkeling or diving. When we are going to the bare sediment area where there's totally none seagrass, and during very windy day, the water is very cloudy and turbid because there's none seagrass help to promote the sedimentation of the suspended particles. Okay. Seagrass also help to reduce pathogen bacteria, which a lot of people are not aware about. And this was compiled in 2018 by a group called CRES. Because there's one scientific finding, they found out that where the coastal area got seagrass, the corals and humans are more healthy and less prone to disease compared with the area without seagrass. And there's a group of researchers in China also found out that seagrass also contains antibacterial, anti-poisons, antioxidants, anti-larvae, and possible anti-cancer property as well. But this only a preliminary studies, and we still need more study to find out if the seagrass can be used for medical purpose in the future. But for now, it's proven that with the seagrass, we can help reduce pathogen runoff from terrestrial to the coral reef area, and we can reduce white band and even brown band disease to the corals, which will act like a pathogen filter and help to maintain the health of the coral reef ecosystem as well. Instead of just seagrass, but it helps to protect the corals in the same time. Well, from studies, we know that more than 50% of the oxygen we are breathing now come from the oceans. But who contribute most of the oxygen we're breathing now? And a lot of people, after listening my talk, they will say, must be seagrass. No. It's a phytoplankton, it's a microscopic plants in the oceans, which contribute to the most of the oxygens we breathe today. While for seagrass, 1 hectare of the seagrass can produce up to 100,000 liters of oxygen per day. You can imagine how much oxygen they are produced and support various organisms. And if you're lucky to snorkeling in seagrass meadow during daytime, you can see a lot of stream of small bubble floating to the surface. In the same time, 1 hectare of seagrass also can produce up to 10 tons of biomass per year. Then people are asking, where the biomass will go? Are they be eaten or what? Seagrass is a favorite diet for the dugongs, one of the endangered marine mammals in the world. And dugongs, they can feed up to 40 kilo a day, 40 kilo seagrass a day. But they're mainly focusing on small size of seagrass, like the Haludius, Halopila, and Syncodium species. While the largest species of seagrass, they're not keen to eat it because it's quite fibrous. And how do we know when we know any dugong in that particular area? We always check on the feeding trails across the seagrass meadows. And a lot of time we don't see dugong frequently because they are quite shy and they'll run away if they see any humans. Even the teams or researchers, they try to study dugongs, they can't sight any dugong in Sabah, in a bay. But what they've done last year, they're using the unmanned flying drones, and they're able to record sighting of dugong and their behavior as well. And besides food for the dugongs, they also diet for green turtle as well, also one of the endangered marine reptile. But for green turtles, they can feed on seagrass and seaweed, so they can choose whatever available. And green turtles can feed up to 4 kilos of seagrass a day. And normally they'll stay in a permanent feeding ground. they'll fatten themselves up 4 to 5 years. When they are ready, they'll migrate back to their breeding ground to breed and lay eggs. Then after laying the egg, they'll start long journey going back to their foraging ground again and fatten themselves 4 or 5 years, then go back to the breeding ground again. And seagrass, because the biomass create a lot of food, so they create food source for various of organisms like snail, polychaete, worms, crabs. Like the photo in the top right hand side, it's not so clear. This is elbow crab species. The status is unknown in Malaysia, but I checked in Singapore, they are listed as endangered species. And this species and this elbow crab, they only live among seagrass meadows. Well, on the lower left-hand side, the green slimy things, there's a green sea hare. This sea hare, they spend the whole life on seagrass leaf only. And this I found in Sabah, KK. And we are suspect this might be a new species as well. And also in seagrass meadow, we always can find a lot of chocolate chip starfish, which they prefer living and feeding among in or adjacent to the seagrass meadow. Of course, seagrass also habitat for seahorse. In Peninsular Malaysia, a lot of the species live among the seagrass meadows. And once the seagrass meadow lost, we also losing the seahorse population as well. And because the seagrass create the canopies which provide shelters and protections, so a lot of small fish will attract to the seagrass meadows. Even like lower left, this black pipefish also living in seagrass meadows. And because they're attracting small fish, this will prey for the higher trophic predators and like scorpionfish in the lower right hand side photos. And later on, they'll attract groupers, and in some area, you're attracting shark as well. In temperate area, the seagrass meadow always visited by shark. And last year, there's one finding that shark species feeding on seagrass, but it's unclear. Either it's a shark purposely feeding on the seagrass, or they are feeding on the fish but accidentally ingest the seagrass leaf, which will still need further studies and confirmation from the researchers group. Like I explained just now, seagrass create habitats. So it supports very high diversities of flora and fauna. In 1 hectare, it's estimated can support up to 40,000 of fish and 50 millions of invertebrate like snail, crabs, polychaetes, and so on. But last year, another group of researchers found that the number should be doubles. But this indicates that the number is underestimated, and we are underestimate the value of the seagrass in the same time as well. Well, in Malaysia, a study by a senior of mine under Dr. Gillians in University Malaya, they found out that in seagrass meadows, they have 6 times more highest number of juvenile fish, same species that found in coral reef. This is a good proof that seagrass is a nursery ground for the fishery resources we have. Although the adult and the big fish we caught from the coral reef, we still also need to protect the seagrass itself, because that's the kindergarten or the nursery ground for the fish we eat. even like the crabs, like these streaming crabs, they might live among the seagrass meadow and might not. But when they are spawned, the crablings or the juvenile crab, the first stage, they'll hide among the seagrass meadow, where they fatten themselves, getting bigger, then they'll migrate to deeper areas. And findings also conclude that 1 per 5 of our global fishery is supported by seagrass meadows. Like these photos, where the fishermen, they caught adult fish in seagrass meadows, which we always thought that seagrass meadow is a nursery ground for juvenile fish only. And this meadow is quite shallow. It's about less than 1 meter water depth. And fishermen still can get a big fish over there. So this also proven that the economic values of the seagrass is very high, and we are still a big gap and need further study and data to find out what is the real values of the seagrass meadow to us. And there's a study just published in last December by a team of seagrass researchers in Singapore. So they found out that in 1 hectare of seagrass can generate up to 242,000 ringgit per year. And this only included some major elements, and there's a lot of factors not included in this number, especially for the ecosystem services provided by the seagrass. So the numbers can be higher than this, and this will play a very important role when we are talking about seagrass conservation, because people is always asking, why do I need to protect the seagrass? What kind of value seagrass can generate to us for humans consumption or even ecosystem services? And seagrass and mangrove might cover less than 2% of our ocean surface, but the coastal wetland, they store more than half of the seabed, oceanic carbon into the seabed. And seagrass also have been recognized as the 2nd largest carbon sinks in the world. Because of this, it indicates the importance of seagrass in mitigate the climate change. In 1 hectare of seagrass, it can store up to 2 times of the carbon captured by the terrestrial forest. And seagrass also have 35 times more effective than terrestrial forests, trapping those carbons and store it into the sediments. Because when seagrass, the old leaf, they will deposit on the sediments, and sediment will build up layer by layer. So all the organic carbon will bury deeper and deeper into the soil and receive lesser oxygens. When there are less oxygens, the decomposition rate also will reduce, and even until stop. And all those carbons will store in the sediments for 100, even 1,000 a year. And this helps to offset the carbon in our atmosphere. And this year, there's papers coming out showing that the potential of the seagrass restoration in offset the greenhouse gases. And this will be a trend in the future for seagrass restoration and even conservation as part of the carbon financings and also fighting the climate change. So when just now I all talk about carbon, but in seagrass meadows, the carbon stored by the seagrass we call blue carbons, And people will always ask, why is blue carbon? Why we call it blue? Because across on our planets, there's a lot of carbon cycles, and all the cycles are named with colors based on their characters or habitats. We have green carbons, which are the carbons stored by the terrestrial forest. We have brown carbons, which trap in the soils or rocks. And blue carbons are the carbon trapped by the wetlands or the coastal vegetations related with the oceans. So that's why we call it blue carbons. So blue carbons are the plants like mangrove, seagrass, salt marshes. They trap the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during the photosynthesis. And the carbon is stored into their biomass. When they die or old leaf trapped inside the sediments, all those organic carbons are trapped there, and it helps to reduce the carbons in the atmosphere. So we move up. So just mention the coastal vegetation habitat cover less than 2% of our world oceans, but it stores more than 48% of oceanic carbon in those habitats. This number might be higher than we know now. Okay, so people always thinking, mangrove, so it can store more carbon because mangroves are bigger, taller, and the trunk is wider. But in mangrove forests, they create a very carbon-rich ecosystem where they trap all the carbon in the muddy sediments, and they can hold up 3 times as much as carbon per hectare, similar to the terrestrial forest. Because in terrestrial forest, the old leaf fall in the floor, and it might ingest by other animals or break down by fungus or insects, and those carbon are recycled. So that's why the effectiveness of trapping the carbons is all from the ocean's ecosystem. So that's why seagrass is one of the main actors to trapping the carbons, because they have 35 times more effective storing the carbon compared with the terrestrial forest. Because the seagrass meadow, if without any disturbance, they can grow and maintain in the ocean for thousands of years. There are some seagrass meadow have been found that the meadow age is thousands of years, because they will rejuvenate themselves and growing, replace the old leaf. So the meadow is maintained and building up layer and layer, growing up with layer and layer of sediment in the same time. So that's how they're trapping all the carbon into deeper sediments. And we have the oxygens, the carbons all will not decompose and will just store inside the sediment. So that's why in ClimatEducate, we are trying to promote and educate people that how important the coastal wetlands in mitigate climate change, because they are trapping the carbons and reduce the carbon footprints we're having now. Okay, so roles. So now I just compile. What is the roles of seagrass in climate change mitigations? The first one is the blue carbons, because they're trapping all the carbons that we are emitting in the atmosphere through fossil building, energy generating, public transport, and so on. Because we need some carbons ecosystem to offset all these carbons. And the ocean is the biggest carbon buffer we have. Because like during when there's a high carbon in the atmosphere, our ocean is act like a sponge. They absorb as much as carbon they can, which lead to the ocean acidification because too much carbon has been absorbed into the oceans. And seagrass, they are trapping as much as carbon they can. And seagrass meadow also help to support high diversity of flora and fauna in the oceans. With balanced ecosystem, it will help to maintains the balance between maintain the balance and the recycles of minerals, energies, which will help to, especially in the carbon cycles. So they will recirculate the carbon in wider ecosystem and help to store it into the seafloor instead of being transported up to the oceans or into the atmosphere. Like phytoplanktons, actually when they are absorb carbon dioxide and then they die, they bring up all the carbon into the deep sea. And all the carbon will store in the deep sea area because there's no light and no oxygen at all. But what happens when we are losing all the biodiversity? There's no balance for the carbon cycles, and carbon is just reappear in the oceans or into the atmosphere. So that's why seagrass, with a healthy seagrass, it will support better biodiversity of flora and fauna. And this also will lead to the food security. Because in climate change, because humans population is increasing, so we need more food. And what happened is we are destroying the habitats, like mangrove for shrimp culture, terrestrial forest for agriculture. And when we are doing the cultures, aquacultures or agricultures, we are using a lot of hormones, growth hormones, antibiotics. All those later on serve on our plate. So this will causing a lot of health problems, malnutrition problem as well. So when we have a better and healthy seagrass meadows, it will create better food chain and more healthy seafood for us to consume and lesser health problems in the future. And fourth, seagrass will help for coastal protections. Because without seagrass, our shoreline will erode, our beach will get smaller and smaller, and also increase of seawater levels. So the seagrass actually will help to stable the sediments and also help promote sedimentation. So they help to create more stable seafloor instead of being eroded during storm or even during windy weathers. And when the shoreline is eroded, it might causing more problems like eroded the mangrove area, washing all the sediments and expose those trapped carbons. And those carbon will be decomposed and released back to the atmosphere. And this adding with our carbon emissions, we are accelerating the climate change effect. Okay. So seagrass is quite important, but they are also facing a lot of challenges as well. For across the globe, it's estimated about 35% of our seagrass meadow have been lost or disappeared. And the degradation rate is estimated about 7% annually globally. You just imagine about 2 football size of seagrass meadow disappear every 30 minutes. It's quite a lot. And why this happens? So the cause of degradation. So there's a lot of factors affecting the seagrass degradation. The first one, the coastal development, dredging, reclammations, building infrastructures, or expanding ports, and so on. There also are some natural factors like disease. There's only one disease called wasting disease, which happened in 80s, where it kills a few kilometers of seagrass meadow in the US. And the conservation group over there, they spent more than 10 years to restore the seagrass. And currently, I believe they restore up to 60 or 70% of the original seagrass meadows. The third factor are the destructive fishings. A lot of area, fish bombing, dredging, all this are destroying our seagrass meadow. And because they think that seagrass, just a grass, nothing important compared with coral reef. So dredging is very destructive and it's destroy the whole seagrass meadow, just a blink of eye. And of course, because tourism or fishing boat, the anchors, without any permanent anchor line, they just anchor anywhere and pulling off all the seagrass. Change of land use. A lot of people will think, what we did on the land, how it affecting our oceans. Because we are using chemicals in the industries, pesticide and fertilizer in the agriculture, all will run into the rivers. Then you transport to coastal environments, which is causing more problem to our seagrass and also coral reef. Like fertilizer, they promote algae overgrown. When the algae grow over seagrass and corals, they are smothering all these habitats. And when they die off, there's no habitat for small fish, and the whole ecosystem and the food chain will collapse. And lastly will be the impact of climate change. Because seagrass is like a double-edged sword knife in climate change. They help to mitigate climate change. But in the same time, when the impact of the climate change over the threshold of what they can tolerate, it will causing problems to the seagrass and also cause the degradation of the seagrass as well. When we emitting too much of carbon dioxide, it will create ocean acidification in our oceans. When a lot of carbons, yes, is benefit to plants like seagrass because more food for them to photosynthesis. But seaweed will be fast growing compared to seagrass, and which it will start smoking the seagrass in the long term. And climate change also, I have a slide slowing later on. Sorry. Okay. So because climate change also increase the frequency, number, and intensity of the storm. So when the storm getting bigger and bigger, the seagrass cannot tolerate much of the energy. So it gets eroded. Just like the photo in the middle, this is a photo of my seagrass restoration project for my master studies. The whole area actually have been, the seagrass have been expand and colonize the whole area. But during the monsoon seasons, it start eroded. and most of the seagrass shoot are unrooted and drift in the oceans. Second impact is the increase of seawater temperatures. Because when the temperature is getting higher, plants and animals, their respiration rate is higher compared with photosynthesis. Like seagrass, when their respiration is higher, whatever they produce, the food they produce is not enough to sustain their life. So they are using up their reserve and slowly die off. While animals like herbivores, they need to eat more food, so they graze more seagrass, and seagrass cannot outgrow with the pressure of the grazing. And seagrass also will start decline and disappear. Just like in the photo, where most of the seagrass have been grazed by the herbivore. Well, just now I mentioned about the ocean acidifications. When the carbon concentration is high in the oceans, seagrass is happy because they have a lot more carbon to convert into food and store in their tissues. But what happens is the algae will outgrow the seagrass, just like these two photos. So they will absorb all the sunlight, the nutrients, and seagrass is getting lesser and lesser. In the same time, ocean acidification also create thinning the shell of the invertebrates or crustaceans like crab, shrimps, and snail. When the snail, they're getting more fragile shell, they are prone to feed by the predators. And some of the snail species, they actually are the algae feeders. They help to clean the algae for the seagrass. But when they are gone or lesser and lesser, algae will overgrow the seagrass as well. So a lot of people say, in the ocean, we have a lot of conservations on corals and mangrove, but why lesser? Or people are not aware about seagrass. The first one will be the lack of media coverage, and second, also lack of awareness. So because there are lesser and lesser people talking about seagrass, so we need to educate more people through various methods. So one of the methods is through articles or video sharings. Like these two articles I write for Malaysian naturalists in June and December 2018, which are talking about seagrass and its role in climate change mitigations, especially in the blue carbons. Because nowadays people are more conscious, more aware about climate change, but they don't know seagrass can play a role in these particular directions. And how do we protect and conserve seagrass? Actually, we are dividing into two sections. The first one is rehabilitation, where we remove the stressor or modify the environment which are suitable for the seagrass to grow. For example, in the certain area, the seagrass facing threat from nutrients runoff from terrestrial. So with better management and integrated management between communities, governments, enforcement, and so on, we reduce or even ban chemicals or pesticides used on land. When those runoff are reduced, seagrass will have better chance to regrow and rejuvenate. The second part will be the restorations, where it's through transplanting, which And normally we'll say this last options when there's last options to conserve the seagrass, because transplantings will taking more labor, times, and cost as well. If we can reduce and protect it, it will costing less resources compared to restore it. And restorations, there's no guarantee of success. So this just a few photos of transplanting where I relocate the seagrass into the restoration site. And the second photos, you see like cage, because in that area, we are facing problem of the green turtles feeding on the newly transplanted seagrass shoot. So that's why we put a cage to protect the seagrass from being grazed by the turtles. And these are the photos showing the cycles of or the progress of the seagrass transplantings. When the shoots start established and growing, they'll start expand themselves, cloning themselves, and create more shoot, then colonize the whole area. And in Thailand, there's studies of a 10 years transplanting project. And what they found out that through the 10 years restorations, the carbon storage inside the sediments are increasing every year. Although the amounts of carbon stored in the restored seagrass meadow is still lower than the natural existing seagrass meadow, but this is an indicator that seagrass restorations do help to store more carbon into the sediments. And when there's more carbons trapped into the sediments, it will reduce some of the effect of the climate change we're facing now. And of course, we need to promote and encourage more protections, conservations, and restoration of seagrass meadows in all areas so that we can reduce the carbon footprints in the atmosphere. And this will help us to fight the climate change. Then a lot of people are thinking, then where should they approach if they're interested about seagrass conservations or want to know more about seagrass? So here I listed some of the NGO in Malaysia we are doing or doing related with seagrass. In Penang, we have the Penang Seagrass Project, where they are doing nature classroom and eco tour. Every year they do few times of tour, they bring tourists to seagrass meadows, to explore the seagrass meadow, what kind of animals they can find there, the importance of the seagrass, and so on. While in middle part of Peninsular Malaysia, in University Malaya, we have the team Seagrass Habitat, led by Dr. Gillian Oi. She is a seagrass oceanography. In Johor, we have the Club Alami Mukim Tanjung Kupang. This is a youth club from about 10 youth over the 10 years. During the age of 10 or 9, they will start involved in the mangrove and seagrass conservations, nature classroom, ecotourism. And now they're even helping the local community to selling seafood, the fishery resources they got, and also collecting scientific data for researchers. While in Sabah, beside Seagrass Guardians, we also have the Research, Education, and Conservation Centers. And in the north part, we have the Kudat Turtles Conservation Society. And when we are visiting seagrass meadow, we can simply be mindful or ask the boatman, slow down when crossing the seagrass meadow, or try to trim, reduce lesser context for the propeller to the seagrass leaf, or just simply push when the water is too shallow. And everyone also can help and become a citizen scientist. When you're aware and know how to identify seagrass, you can use this mobile app, the Seagrass Spotters, where with upload the photos, you can pinpoint where you found it. And this app is open access to everyone. So everyone also can check and confirm if that the seagrass in any particular areas. And in 2017, it was first launched in UK. And in 1 year's time, they found more seagrass meadow compared previously been reported by researchers, because this involves citizen science. Even in Malaysia, I've been tracking out, putting a lot of points where seagrass meadow can be found. Let's say in the future, if you see any seagrass, you are not, how do I say, not keen to upload it, you also can share with me, and then I identify and help to upload in this app. And this will help conservation in the long term, because we do not have a well distribution map of seagrass in Malaysia yet. And through the app, with the help of the citizen scientists and everyone, we can map it out, we can identify and confirm where's the seagrass meadows and where's the biggest one and why it's important. Then we can propose to authorities to do more protections and conservation in the same time. Okay, so that's a general talk I'm sharing tonight with everyone here.